Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my revisit of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. So for those not across it, this segment on this channel, Worth You Now, is where we're going back to games that I covered on the main channel. You know, once a little bit of time's moved on and going back to things when they're on sale. This is on a deep sale at the moment, so we can have a chat about them and see if they still hold up. Now look, this is an Ubisoft game, and I understand it's very popular to bash on Ubisoft, and at the same time, as much as I am, you could say like a sympathetic ear, I play all the Ubisoft games, and generally speaking, I still think a lot of them have a lot of the magic that makes them kind of AAA slot machines in a way, right? Like, they have a blueprint, they have a formula, it is very comfort food, and a lot of people still really enjoy them, myself included. But I also recognize a lot of the criticisms, especially of the Ubisoft business practices in general, are pretty spot on. Two things can be right. And in this case, Ubisoft is a bit of a bad guy. Sure, yes, true. I understand your complaints. And Avatar is in many ways unfairly maligned because it's an Ubisoft product. This is also true. I really like this game, and it still holds up, and my god, it's still one of the prettiest games ever. At the time when I looked at it like a year ago, on whatever mid to slightly high-end rig I was on, it felt generational in its graphical fidelity upgrade and the world. You can see these forests that you're moving through. It's phenomenal. And now I'm running a monster rig at the moment. Something like a 9800 3DX, 64 gig, and a 4070 Ti. And so I'm running this thing at 4K max chickens. You can see I accidentally left the frame counter for Ubisoft, because I may or may not be playing another Ubisoft game in their launcher in pre-release, but I can't talk about it. Stand by for that. But I guess it helps to know where the performance at. So Far Cry reskinned is something you'll hear. I get that. To me, that's a little bit of an achievement because it's done by Studio Massive Entertainment. I'm not sure if they're actually technically first party by Ubisoft, but they make Ubisoft stuff, most notably The Division. So they've taken the format, and it must be some sort of internal handshake agreement to play nice with the internal teams that normally do Far Cry and that whole system, because it really does feel like a Far Cry game. Almost in a strange alternate universe, cousin once removed sense of something like Blood Dragon. And that's an avenue that they could go down. It would probably be fairly lucrative for them, where they do things like this, where it's a Far Cry-like. Like it almost is a reskinned, or taking the Far Cry formula out of the Far Cry franchise and putting it into something else. In this case, it's Avatar. See, I don't have a particular anything for Avatar. I watched the first movie because that was all the rage when I was younger, and, 3D and IMAX, and it was a big deal, and I appreciated it for what it was. But as much as it was supposed to be James Cameron's big second coming into cinema since his sort of 80s domination, it was a good attempt, but it didn't quite catch me. Maybe it did for a younger generation. But I will say this, if you are an Avatar fan, this game is made for you. The love and the attention to detail to the world and the source material is unparalleled. Now look, this isn't just going to be piling praise on it or anything like that. The negatives are there, and they still hold from what I said earlier. Essentially, you're playing a sort of, I don't know if the Americans would even understand the analogy, but the stolen generation, kind of, it's a big black spot in Australia's history where, we scooped up a bunch of Aboriginal kids and took them off their families and raised them up, in white schools and that sort of stuff. And look, I don't even really have any comment on that, but this is following a similar path in that they've scooped up some Avatar kids and raised them in kind of a human setting with human sensibilities. And the idea being that it's a technique to broach the two cultures. I don't need to lecture on Avatar, but it does have those sort of dances with wolves overtures of colonizing and coming up against, the tech-savvy, familiar humans coming up against the more tribal other. And look, it's a setup, it works. It's the most tragic misstep of an opening of a game I've ever seen, because as much as I really like the human sci-fi component of Avatar, the strength of this is the naturalistic beauty of this alien forest and all its plants and ferns and roughage and just everything. And yet the game sort of gates you behind all these cutscenes in a miserable, drab, concrete classroom for first half hour. But when you finally break out, it blows your mind how beautiful this game is. And I just feel like, I get it, maybe they really were dog with a bone, this is the narrative and how they wanted to open, but man, from the second the screen's loaded up, you should have been in this forest. And as the story goes along, it's actually really interesting, and I personally really enjoy the trappings and the world building and found it quite original. Again, I've only just dipped back in to revisit for this, but I still remember fondly, you are part of this kind of dead clan, and they're fleshing it out. So there is that sort of discovery and curiosity. And again, that's always been a soft spot with, like, me, specifically Assassin's Creed games. So we'll see how Shadows goes. But even all the way up to, like, Mirage, they still have all these interesting little lore pieces about the Abbasid Caliphate and, you know, pottery pieces from this time period and this, that, and the other. And, you know, as a boring kind of old man that enjoys these encyclopedic historical entries and learning about cultures, that's what I really enjoy. And yes, this is all fictitious and made up, but they still go down that path a bit, and they really tap that spirit of discovery. So the idea is that the Avatar people, the Pandorans or whatever they're called, are split up into tribes, and you and your classmates are kind of from this dead tribe called Sarantu, and they're more of like a sort of Wanderlust troubadour type tribe. And that's very gamey. It ties into the game mechanic that you're sort of going around uniting the tribes, meeting all these different tribes with their distinct, you know, there's ones that live on plains and there's ones that like using birds and stuff like that. So it, you know, it is very gamey, but it gives you an excuse to travel around and see the world and not just sort of stay in the one tribe like most Avatar people would. And so it's just really interesting and fun to kind of learn the world. But it's also got, you know, performative bullshit in there as well. They can't really do it with the, you know, the tribe primitive type people. That sort of, they play that straight and it works fine. But the humans in this, it's so terrible, and I avoid them as much as possible. Like, there's bad guy humans, you fight them, they're bad guys polluting the area, whatever. Like, that's fine, it's all very exaggerated. Like the outposts that you take over Far Cry style are putting out pollution, and like, I don't particularly give a fuck about the messaging, but what's really interesting is how it terraforms the surrounding area. So you go into the fight and it's all this muddy, murky, polluted, disgusting, and it's cool because it adds dynamism, you know, it adds layers to the environment. You clear the environment, it goes back to being a beautiful forest, you can harvest again. Oh, and like, speaking of harvest, like there's all these cool mini games I really like the cooking and that. It's all very AAA, it's fairly basic, fairly surface level, but you know, you pluck fruits and there's a little mini game to pull them off with the right thumbsticks, and there's certain harvesting conditions, like you want to do it in the rain for certain things, and you try and get the pristine sample to min-max it. I really like the loot gear upgrade system. It's kind of got this character level component. It does remind me a bit of a lighter version of The Division in a way. But yeah, the friendly humans are insufferable because they are, you know, San Francisco game developers self-inserted as a people. You know, they all sit around on fucking beanbags, and the main kooky girl with purple hair, and the thing, if you think she's cool, if you model yourself after her, you're a fucking loser. Like, I'm sorry no one's telling you in your group, because you probably surround yourself with other wankers in your little echo chamber, but real normal people that have to interact with you and have to do a real job and live in the real world, they nod and smile because they're not confrontational, but they hate you. They think you're an idiot. But again, people go this far in life unchecked that they unironically will self-insert this shit into a game and think it's a value add, and it's not. So her and many of the human self-insert writer type people in this game are just absolutely eye-rolling cringe dog shit. But you know, you stick with your Avatar people, you cast the characters, you got your fellow friends from the school, you know, they're a bit stereotypical. One of them, for example, is very humanized, and he's kind of scared of everything in the real world, and I get what they're doing, very unsubtle messaging, but it works. You know, exaggerated character can work. And the combat and the parkouring around, the jumping around, because you're playing like this kind of giant, at least compared to the humans, it works really well, you know? Drilling them with this bow with arrows as big as humans, you feel the impact. It absolutely throttles dudes in one shot, and you run up and punch them, and they go flying, and the way that you climb around and kind of, it is got a little bit of a floaty, but I really enjoy the platforming fidelity. It works really well. And that's not even to mention, you know, you unlock all sorts of crazy stuff, hunting side quests, you get your bird later on, and anyway, it was very cool just to dip back in and check it out. Like I said, it's on sale. I recommend it. If you've got the splash around money, maybe you've got a pretty high performance rig. I recognize mine's ridiculous. And you want to just really push it and see what really next gen graphic world design looks like, because a lot of games miss the mark, even coming out today. But this one still is absolutely top of the line. So yeah, I recommend it. I really enjoy it. And again, I've probably upset people because I've been even-handed about it. Ubisoft can be the bad guy, but at the same time, they can still make games that have a glimmer of hope in them. And that's what's going on here. And I really enjoyed my time with it, and I'll probably play some more now that I've reinstalled it. Anyway, team, I'll just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.